XTalks is the industry leader in connecting life science, food, healthcare, and medical device professionals. The XTalks Life Science podcast features insightful conversations with industry experts about all things pharma, biotech, and more.
Hello and welcome to the XTalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Aisha Rashid, Senior Life Science Journalist at XTalks.com, and this week I'm happy to introduce a very special guest on the show. We have with us today Dr. Judy Chou, who is the CEO, President, and Board Member of Chou Bio, which is a company developing first-in-class immunomodulators to target diseases of the immune system. Prior to joining Chou Bio, Dr. Chou headed the global biotech organization at Bayer Pharmaceuticals, overseeing the development, manufacturing, and distribution of Bayer's biotechnology pipeline, product portfolio, and more, and overseeing more than 2,000 employees. Before Bayer, Dr. Chou held various leadership roles at biopharmaceutical companies including Pfizer, Medivation, Tanvex Biopharma, Genentech, and AbbVie. Throughout Dr. Chou's illustrious career, she has achieved significant milestones in biologics development and multiple filings of BLAs, NDAs, and INDs of novel products. Dr. Chou is well recognized by the biomedical industry for her leadership and has received the Most Influential Women in Business Award in 2018 by San Francisco Business Times. Currently, Dr. Chou also serves as the board of directors of Akero Therapeutics, the California Institute of Regenerative Medicines, and the advisory board members of UC Berkeley Engineering School and Silicon Valley Women in Engineering. Before joining the industry, Dr. Chou was a research faculty member at Harvard University Medical School, and Dr. Chou obtained her PhD from Yale University and completed her postdoctoral training at Max Planck Institute in Germany. To hear more about the work that Dr. Chou is now heading at Chou Bio, let's turn to her now. Dr. Chou, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to first begin. I was going through your bio and learning more about you before the show, and you have had such, as I mentioned, an illustrious, very intensive career in the biopharmaceutical biotech industry. And so I'd like to ask you about that journey and how you started off transitioning essentially from academia as you were a research faculty member at Harvard and navigating through some of the biggest biopharmaceutical companies in the industry, and then what ultimately led you to Chou Bio now?
Thank you for that question. So I think for me, the whole journey started way back when I was at medical school and before entering the PhD. For me, I'm very firm about knowing my passion in three things. One is on science, and second is innovation, and third is to be able to help patients. So with these three passions, first I start my career, as you mentioned, in academic, and with the thought about the deep research, hopefully to identify some solution which I was not able to apply when I was at medical school, so creating new solution for patients. So entering the industry become a little bit logical sense. That's kind of bringing the science innovation much more closer to patients rather than doing the research or maybe as an MD treating one patient at a time. So I guess if I would give you a short answer, all along of my career, even though moving from academia to industry and to all various different roles, for me, most important things, I need to be able to apply my passion in these three things to any position I have and to be able to really, truly make a difference.
Indeed. I think that's such a wonderful perspective and motivation to have. And I think that's ultimately what has definitely led to your successes in the industry. And so Dr. Chou, can you tell us a bit more about Chou Bio and what really led you to gravitate towards the company, and what are the company's missions and goals, essentially?
Yeah, UltraBio was founded in year 2020, and when I joined, and maybe a little bit connecting to your previous question also, the start of the UltraBio is because my former leaders at Genentech, we used to work together and having this same enthusiasm towards novel therapy to make a difference. And we all left Genentech more or less about 10 years. And I was at Bayer running this global organization. And then when a bunch of the former executives from Genentech realized this new technology, it's nothing to do with Genentech. As I say, we all left the company for 10 years. And we see this is something very much what we are all passionate about, to have this new technology and putting together. So in year 2020, the 5 former Genentech former executive and together with me, we started this company and registered under UltraBio's name, with this very novel technology as today's the immune checkpoint enhancer, and with this new target on PSGO1, and trying to make a difference to address the immunological disease issue by using this kind of like a reverse of the immune checkpoint regulator, by enhancing the inhibitory function to bring the immune system back to homeostasis. That's the idea about UltraBio. But fast forward to your question about what's today's UltraBio. So we have the leading candidate under the project code LTB26A. And we are starting in this first target, ulcerative colitis, which is in the IBD space. And we will like to have this full potential of a pipeline in a product to expand that into many immunology and inflammatory disease, so-called I&I disease space. And that's our main focus.
Wonderful. And so, as you mentioned, you touched upon some of your lead candidates, and really, what, in your opinion, are some of the current unmet needs in immune disorders like ulcerative colitis and psoriatic arthritis, which is another indication that you're working in? And so, what are really the pressing issues and the pressing needs of the moment right now?
Yeah, good question. I think this is why I decided to step down from my former position to this company. So in the I&I space, there are many drugs, and people tend to say that's an overcrowded area. And to be frank, it's still very underserved area. If I would zoom in from the ulcerative colitis to start with, and I'll get to the psoriatic arthritis later. So in ulcerative colitis, currently the market drug, the best drug, probably only have 30 to 35% of a remission rate. When we talk about this, people tend to think, oh, the drug can help patient to feel 30 to 35% better. It is not. It's actually, when 100 patients got treated, only about 30 patients, after stepping through 12 to 18 months of treatment, and can really getting the help. So that we left about 65 to 70 patients untreated and spending all this time. And that's we're talking about very severe disease. So in ulcerative colitis, patient experience a frequent stool. The stool frequency is very high, to like 20 times. Imagine going to the bathroom like about more than 20 times a day, and also rectal bleeding. So all those different symptoms, very, very unbearable. And having left about 65 to 70% of this patient not being able to get a solution, that's a very severe problem. And then from the IBD, the prevalence, and also much more like an increase of the incidence, and become high and high. So a lot of patients experience this. And like you mentioned, there are other diseases like psoriatic arthritis or many the immunological and inflammatory disease, all probably more or less just in that range. So this is definitely a big issue, and particularly those are the chronic diseases. So it will take really a long time for patients have to suffer through all those diseases through a long time. So definitely, I think the medical need is there. That's also a big issue for many patients and their families.
Indeed, and thank you for highlighting that. We do hear that there are a lot of new drugs coming out for ulcerative colitis, but that's very eye-opening that you mentioned how only 35% are benefiting from those drugs. So that definitely is a huge gap. So indeed. And so, Dr. Chou, you did touch upon some of your lead candidates. And so what really sets AllTrueBio's approach apart from other companies in the field or other work in the field, really? And as a first-class immunomodulators, what exactly is the novelty about your therapeutic approach?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So currently, if we use the analogy about the inflammation or immunological issue as this fire, like a fire inside of a body to kind of attack our health or many organs and systems. And the current treatment, more or less, are all these anti-cytokines. They are like putting out the fire, but without treating the source of the fire. So our mechanism is targeting the late stage, the chronically activated T cells, which are the source of the fire. So without putting out source of fire, and there's no surprise, most of the treatments today can only treat it for a while, and majority, as we just discussed, about 65 to 70% doesn't work. But also, they are, after a while, it just doesn't work well because the fire came back. So our approach is in treating the source of the fire, so putting up, down-regulating those T cells, those problematic T cells, so the chronically activated T cells, and with the source of the fire got removed, the result will be much more efficacious, and also it'll be much more durable. So that's why we're very, very enthusiastic about this first-in-class target. And then in this kind of thinking, we are the first one targeting PSGL1, which is a very important immune checkpoint regulator. We'll be able to downregulating the PSGL or enhance the PSGL1, the downregulation function that help to treat the immune system. And that's probably no surprise in our first generation molecule. We already see, this is before the 26A, we already see the efficacy among 4 different indications and also very compelling safety profile.
Wonderful. And so, speaking about some of the testing or evaluation, are some of these compounds in human trials, and what kind of preliminary data can you share with us from those trials?
Sure. So allow me to go back to the first generation before 26A for good reason, because they share very similar mechanism of action. So in our first generation molecule, we already have more than 200 patient data. And those are among 4 different indications, including psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, ulcerative colitis, and also GVHD. And in all those different indications, we show efficacy as well as the safety. And that gives us the confidence to build further on the second generation. That is today's 26A. 26A leverages exactly the same mechanism of action, but we double that binding domain. So it's an enhanced version. So we are not changing the mechanism of action, but we make it much more effective. Fair to say, in our preclinical studies, we realize anything 16A can do, our first generation can do, the second generation can do better. And so with that confidence, then we moving into ulcerative colitis. Currently, we are in a phase 2 study in ulcerative colitis, and we do not have that data to share in the public domain yet. And we are doing the phase 2A and anticipate we should have the readout the middle of next year.
Wonderful. I mean, the company only came into being during COVID, right? 2020. So
right.
I think, having made it this far, it's amazing. And we look forward to hearing more about that preliminary data from the phase 2 trials next year. We'll definitely keep an eye out for that. And so in terms of, we talk a lot about, the clinical trial space and how things are often changing in terms of the different types of clinical trials. Of course, during COVID, adoption of decentralized trials, patient-centric trials, and all of that, those different models, hybrid trials. So what do those really mean to you in the context as a biopharmaceutical leader in this space, and how are you implementing some of these approaches? Are some of these just like become buzzwords, or are companies really taking this seriously? And what is UltraBio's approach and perspective on the types of trials that you want to conduct for patients?
I like this question. As I say, for me personally, important thing is three things, right? Science, innovation, and also help patients. So for UltraBio, I think we take the patient-centric very seriously. I think a golden example is currently why we're stepping into ulcerative colitis. So back to 2021, as you highlight, right? So 2020 is a perfect time to start a company because it's very, very difficult. But then ulcerative colitis is a big indication. And what we are competing are all big pharmas, basically. So along the way, I would say from 2020 up to even today, a lot of people were criticized about why we want to do UC. And I think first thing first is because, as I described, this is a medical needs. If we want to do something, got to do something truly meaningful, truly make a difference. It's not just one more drug to be there available and let patient have to stepping through. I personally not passionate about doing that, and I think that's how we set a strategy about UltraBio. So that's first thing. And zooming a little bit more detail as you're talking about the patient-friendly. And if we were not paying attention to that, we should have just progressed our first generation. Because our first generation already have a phase 2A data demonstrating the clinical remission at 29%. Currently, no other drug on the biologic refractory patient population have such a high remission rate. And we could have just moving that forward. The only one thing held us back is because it's a weekly IV dosage form. I couldn't bear thinking about the patient already, as I described, have to run to the bathroom so many times a day and have to take the commute every week, going to the clinics and sit there or lay down there for the whole infusion, even though it's a potent drug. It's just not doable. So we took the step back, took the years to design the second generation, and coming now, the second generation is a subcutaneous dosage form to make it a very helpful patient. And the last thing I would say, also echoing the point you say, so as we are designing the upcoming global trial, and we are implementing all different technology to make it a much more patient-friendly. I should say even our ongoing phase 2A study, we give patient a choice in the maintenance phase. We'll be able to either to self-administration or have a nurse going to the patient's home to do the administration instead of have to make them have to go to the clinics. So we took it very seriously about this is ongoing. Yeah.
Wow, that indeed. I mean, that just does not just speak to the trial design, but the actual design of the drug in the drug development phase to go back and come up with a second iteration, a second gen version that is more accessible to patients in terms of convenience, and just really thinking about that. I think that really puts into perspective what UltraBio is about. So that's really fantastic to learn about. That's really, really, really great. And I really commend you, you and your team for that. And so I think my next question here is about, you've been both within academia and industry. And so what kinds of partnerships does UltraBio have in terms of strategic collaborations within industry, with academia, government, and what do those partnerships look like, and how important are they? Maybe they're not so important, especially if you're trying to fly out to create something very innovative. So how do you navigate all of that?
I myself definitely very passionate about partnership. I think this industry totally requires that. So this it is a must for all the biotech or pharmaceutical industry. But for UltraBio today, in our biggest collaboration or partnerships is with academic institute on the clinical study and also many preclinical studies. So that's I think fair to say very well established, and maybe also proudly to share. Last week we just announced our newly formed scientific advisory board, and with 2 professors from Harvard and 1 in France, very prestigious institutes. So those we are very, very passionate about, and has already have that established. In terms of with the industry and government, we are not doing that yet, and not because we don't want to. So for government, basically those funding for now, fortunately for us, because we are very well funded by a lot of venture capital firms. That's why making a little bit kind of not easy to have that together with the government funding. And industry was still trying to build that. We have a lot of ongoing discussion, but not quite have the official partnership yet.
And so in terms of, we've been hearing in the last couple of years that the biotech, biopharmaceutical industry is facing some challenges in terms of funding constraints and, ever evolving regulatory aspects as well. And so what is your take on how the industry has evolved as, having been in the industry for many years as a leader? And so how have you seen this space evolve, both, I guess, from the structure of, biotech, bio companies and how they are doing the science, and as I mentioned, through to regulatory and funding and all of that?
Yeah, there are a couple of different things. That's a big question, right? From the overall environment, I think definitely from the point I start my career to now, it changed quite a bit about this emerging biotech notion. So basically, it become much more like the innovation. A lot of come from small biotech, and then big pharma become a little bit more like a well-established commodity, kind of like a drive for the marketing and sales side. This, frank speaking, wasn't really quite there, I guess, 25 years ago, and now become much more like a established structure, and for good reason. And I personally think this is a good thing, not a bad thing, because big pharma structure, the existing marketing and sales can be quickly making the drug into the market and moving that faster to make it much more patient accessible. And that's a good thing, instead of relying on each individual biotech to do that. And then small biotech can move innovation much more quicker. There's no doubt about it. It's not like something big pharma make a mistake. It's just the whole infrastructure is hard. I used to run a thousands of people's organization. There's a different focus. So it's hard to move things very, very quick. So this probably from structural point of view, definitely evolved into today, which I think is probably a nice ecosystem. And then you mentioned about the regulatory. I always think for our industry, having this stringent regulatory is a good thing. Meaning like set a boundary about what is reasonable, what is not. And people tend to think because of that slowed us down. I don't feel that way, but I feel the whole two-way dialogue and trying to establish a sound system, that's very important. And maybe fast forward thinking about the novel therapy and also many of the cell gene therapy area. I give the regulatory, no matter FDA or EMA, a lot of credit about moving along, trying to move that as fast as possible. So I think the regulatory environment definitely changed, probably much more along with different technology, and then in a collaborative way. I don't think that's really necessarily being very different. But I will praise also the other paths, which UltraBio benefit a lot about the accelerated approval process. We definitely have our first generation, even though, as I mentioned, we decided to step back, generate a second generation. So when we were on our GVHD study, and we are dealing with the terminal disease patients, then definitely got a very strong support to have the fast track designation to be able to move the progress much faster, open up the two-way dialogue. I think those make a huge difference for the industry. So in a sense, I feel the regulatory landscape change is, in my opinion, is a positive but not negative.
And in terms of innovations in the field and advancements, which I'm sure you've seen a lot of throughout your career, what kinds of advancements, trends have you seen in the last, I would say, decade that have really transformed the biotech, biopharmaceutical space? And then number two, what advancements and trends do you see coming up in the next couple of years that can further transform this space?
So I like a lot. I praise this whole industry a lot about the overall innovation. You can consider this is kind of creating multiple different tools, right? So the industry start with a small molecule, and then moving into biologics and monoclonal antibody, and then now cell gene therapy. So answering your first question about what I think truly make a difference, I think really is to create all different kind of way of approach the disease. So it's not just one, not just a small molecule, and actually having different kind of new modalities to be able to treat the disease differently. Small molecule and biologics first start with a little bit like a treating and introducing some way to correct the disease in a sense. Cell and gene therapy is more about start also from first replacing missing some gene and then adding the gene on, and then later on also become a tool of providing a treatment. So all those are all different ways, and I'm personally very excited about all those progress, create much more way to, like I say, tools to enable the treatment. The second part of your question about what I see most exciting, I think it's both the enhancement of those tools and also the target. So taking UltraBio, for example, why we are so excited about it is then the first-in-class mechanism that we treat the disease in a different way, so the science part. And in a sense, you can consider the biotech on the biology side and technology side, right? So the biology side, I think I will anticipate more and more new target will be discovered and identified, and like what we are focusing on. And technology side, as I mentioned, also those different kind of tools, different modalities. And with the beautiful merge of the bio and technology both together, I think will truly make a difference. So what I'm most exciting is all those two things that interface and create something we did not see before and couldn't quite imagine before. Maybe connecting a little bit back to your prior question, most proud about is really back then when I was in medical school, PhD, and those textbooks need to be rewritten because a lot of things in the past we consider as a terminal and it's a dead end. We cannot help patient, and now we are keeping changing that, and that really truly is making all of us in this field very motivated to keep going with the science innovation and to make a difference for patients.
No, I love that, and to really rewrite those books as you said, and as you're doing, which is so wonderful. And so, what are some of the milestones? I know you did touch upon that your lead candidate will have its readout from its phase 2 trial mid next year. But what other milestones can we expect in the coming months and coming years from UltraBio?
Yeah. Currently, we are dedicated to get the phase 2A result, and that's the top of our priority. And as you mentioned, that will be middle of next year. At the same time, we are getting our phase 2B trial prepared. Fortunately for us, this May, we managed to raise up to $225 million, and this enables us to accelerate the phase 2B. So more or less about the readout of phase 2A will be when we kick off the phase 2B. The third thing, as I mentioned, our first generation already have more than 200 patient data and validated in 4 different indications. So for us, there's no excuse. It's now no longer ambition. We need to look into another indication to start the study. So most likely that will be the second half of next year. So next year is very important for us. With 3 milestones. Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. And we'll definitely be keeping an eye out at all of the happenings next year here at XTalks for what UltraBio will be putting out, and looking forward to all of those developments for sure. And so just to end off, I just wanted to ask, as a leader with so much experience across both large and small biopharmaceutical and biotech companies, what really is your approach and perspective to working in the industry, and what advice would you give to aspiring biotech entrepreneurs and innovators?
I think like I mentioned in the beginning, I have my passion more or less kind of decided earlier in my life. And I would definitely advise everybody kind of seek for that true passion you really care about. Something you jump out of bed without anybody have to ask you to do it. And that's what I call the passion. But the core of that, what it really matters, as we kind of discussed today, also moving my career along different ways and covering all different areas in biopharma, I would say what kept me going and what helped me to make decision about what is the most important areas I can make the impact is that passion. So I suggest everybody kind of trying to find that passion everyone has. And it is, this is an industry with a lot of great purpose. So I don't think people join this industry take it lightly. And that impact to patients is probably the most important thing. So if any tips, I would say find that passion and then thinking big about how to truly make a difference for patients. That's probably what will motivate and also make every day enjoyable also.
Wonderful. I love that. Dr. Chou, thank you so much for your time being on the show today. Greatly appreciate the very insightful discussion, and to give us a chance to learn more about the wonderful work that you're leading at UltraBio.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all those great questions.
Thank you. That's the end of this episode of the XTalks Life Science Podcast. If you liked today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
To join the XTalks community, visit XTalks.com and register for exclusive access to curated content like live webinars, news articles, and educational videos. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policy or position of Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.